Alright, hey YouTube and Blast the Forum. So one of the things I wanted to do, and I've been wanting to do it for a while, is how to actually adjust your shocks. And obviously front ones, you have this down here, and that's the only adjustment you have. But the rear ones, where you have a reservoir on them, what you want to do is how to adjust, or a way to adjust them, is first thing you want to do is you want to get your tape measure. And you want to jack the quad up all the way. Or have someone pick it up for you. Want to get it up so that way back wheels are just barely touching to where the shock compresses about a quarter inch, if not anything. So we want to pick a spot on your quad. I'm doing this back part. You want to measure it from the ground up, and right now mine's 29 inches, right there. So what you want to do is to set your preload, which is the spring. You want to release it so all the weight is on there, and you want to drop it. And then what you want to do is you want to get on it, bounce around a few times, let it rebound back up. And what you want to do is you want to take your thing and measure it again. That's 28 inches. It went from 29 to 28. You want it to be about 2 inches, so you want to go back down to 27. But the way you do this is you can keep it about half an inch to an inch higher than 2 inches. So drop it down about an inch, and that means when you have your helmet on, your riding gear, your gas tank is full, you have your boots on, everything is on. With the weight added, which is probably going to be another 10 pounds or so, but drop it down the rest of the way. And that'll give you 30%. That's using 30%-ish of your full travel. So that's the first thing you ever want to do is when you get a shock, is set the preload. And by doing that, and that's done by there's two little screws, or two nuts. Can't stick my hand up there. Right there and right there. You just loosen them, twist the spring, and that's it. So the next adjustment you want to do is your compression. Now, if you set your preload too tight, rebound and compression are going to act differently. If you set it too loose, it's going to act differently. I weigh 120 pounds, so my spring rate is pretty much as soft as it could get. I think it's a little bit tighter, so that way you don't want the spring to jiggle around. So it's a little bit tight from that. But if you pick the quad up, you can spin the spring. That's just because of how light I am, and yeah. So with that properly set, you want to set that first. Compression is basically how hard, and how fast the quad goes from where it is sitting to all the way down when it compresses. You can see that in the shock right there. And compression is a kind of a hard adjustment, but it's the most commonly used one. Now, I read a bunch of papers and stuff like that, and none of this is actually said for a quad. It's said for all dirt bikes and stuff like that, but yeah. So when you set the compression on a quad, quads are much heavier than dirt bikes. Blaster is about 350 pounds, full gas and everything. And compared to a dirt bike, which is less. So when you do jumps, you have 350 pounds, probably actually around 250, because you're minusing the weight of the tires, hitting the ground. And when it hits the ground, the shock compresses. Now, how fast it compresses is done by that screw right there. You want to set the screw so that way when you land, you're using 75%, if not more, of your suspension travel. So you want it to end around up there or so. But you also don't want it too tight where when you're going over whoops or anything like that, it's really rough on you or small bumps. So you have to find that perfect balance between you're using your full suspension, but it's very soft. And then obviously you would adjust that for riding conditions. So like if I'm riding on a bigger track with bigger jumps, I would tighten that a half to a full turn. Smaller tracks, less jumps, loosen it, because the looser the better, for the most part. Yeah, that's pretty much it. So bigger jumps, tighten it. Smaller jumps, loosen it. Find the balance in between the two, and you should be set. For the rear, or for the rebound on a 400EX shock, I forgot to mention that's a 400EX, is right there. That screw, turn it to the right, slows the rebound, turn it to the left, it loosens it. Now, the crash I experienced, which is why this is all taken apart, I'll show you the steering stem real quick. That's the steering stem. That's supposed to be straight, and it's bent. So it just bent right at the column where it connects. So what happened with me is when I hit the top of the jump, my suspension compressed all the way, or close to all the way, rebounded, and when it rebounded, it bucked me forward because the rebound was too hard from the spring. Now, a single rate spring, which are the ones I have, it's a stock front ones or 400EX, means that the further the shock compresses, the more tension is on the spring, the harder it's going to come push out. So obviously when it's up here, it's going to be very, very soft, and it's going to be good for whoops. And as you get bigger, it gets harder to compress and push because of the spring. The compression, I forgot to say, is a constant rate. So no matter where it is, if it's fully extended or all the way down, it's going to be the same all the way. Now, so when I hit the top of the jump, bucked me forward, and then it fell off. Bucked me forward because, well, one, my rebound spring, our screw was all the way out, and I did that for a reason because I'm very light, and I don't know, it's just my shock is kind of weird, and it rebounds really slow until it reaches full bottom, and then it really kicks. I didn't know that, so you want to do that. Now you want to set the rebound pretty much as bouncy as possible, but you want to set it as stiff as possible too. So you want to find that balance in between. Now the bouncier it is, the more it's gonna buck from jumps or anything like that. The good thing for it being bouncy is when you're on your whoops, when the tires come up, they rebound fast. So the back tires are able to hit every rut while you keep the fronts pulled up and just tapping the tops. That was the plus side. I was riding through whoops like crazy fast because of that, and it was awesome. But as soon as you hit the bigger jumps and it's from your lip, you feel it bucking forward, and it's kind of scary because you start to nosedive. So that's the pro for it to be bouncy. For it to be stiff, it might oppose a actually harder ride because the shock does something called packing up. And what packing up means is that when it gets compressed, it can't rebound quick enough. So when it gets compressed, it starts to rebound, so you hit the next bump, it gets compressed more. It starts to rebound, hit the next bump, gets compressed even more. So eventually the shock has nowhere to go, and it's fully closed, and you have to stop, wait for it to rebound all the way out. That's bad, because you have no suspension eventually at a certain point, and it'll be bouncy, and it'll be all around hard on your quad. So that's why you don't want it to be hard. The only time you might want it to be really stiff in the rebound is if you're doing monstrous 150, 200 foot jumps, and which you can't do with a blaster. So you want to set that. So it's pretty nice. It's not bucking anywhere, and it acts normal and everything. Again, I forgot to tell you, one of the pros again for it to be bouncy is that when you hit a jump and you don't quite make it to the next jump, so you do a double, and back tires land on, say, I don't know, a 4 or 5 foot high other jump on the other side. So when they hit, they compress really fast, and then they drop. And what that'll do is even you out instead of bucking you forward, and it'll be softer landing and everything. I got saved a bunch of times because of that. So you want it to be set like that. And then, of course, Once you set the rebound, the rebound and preload almost never change because there's really no reason to change them once you get them set nicely. Compression usually changes a lot. I find myself tightening the compression on bigger tracks, say like AK Farms, where the jumps are much bigger, and you don't want the suspension completely bottom out. And then on, say, Walden, where there's only a few big jumps, maybe 3 or 4 out of the whole track, you have it looser. Yeah, so looser, better for whoops, tighter, better for jumps, and for rebound, it's looser is better for whoops, tighter is better for jumps, big jumps, and not trail riding. So I've been looking all over the internet. I found stuff kind of related to that, but not quite what I was looking for. It never explained the different types of elements that you can hit while riding and stuff like that. Trail riding, you might want your compression pretty darn loose, and not pretty darn loose. Rebound, you want it maybe halfway between middle and hard, more on the soft side. And preload is to your weight and everything. Yeah, and same with the fronts. Just yeah, I haven't gotten front shocks yet. I'm still looking. So, with that being said, I will show you what I mean by compression rebound. I'm not changing my settings because I just got them to the way I want them. So, yeah. Oh, and the last thing is, where you stand is, like, where you sit in your quad is completely different from the back. So, where you stand, which is on the foot pegs, back here, you might shift your weight back, and that will compress your shock even more because you're moving your weight directly over the tires, which is where the suspension is made to be, where it's made to have the most travel. As you move back, it starts to compress more. As you move up, it compresses less. So when you set all your adjustments, make sure you're on the quad properly, and you're not leaning back, leaning forward, or anything like that, or you're not pushing on this bar, the grab bar, to get your right adjustments, because that'll just screw things up and make it even harder than what it should originally be. Some good settings, mostly, is you set your preload you set it, and that's pretty much it. You could do that in your garage or anything like that. And what you might want to do for compression is you start on the loosest setting, which is all the way out. You turn it maybe 2 or 3 turns in, full turns. Compression, start it so it's about flush with this, if not a little bit poking out. And those are good settings to start at. You can play around with it, push it down, do stuff like that. Try to get an all-around good feeling for it, and start from there. You hit a track, hit some jumps, hit some whoops, and start adjusting from there. Mine is set up for a track, obviously. Trail riders are completely different. You know, there's bumps in opposite directions, so that tire might be up on a rock, that one might be completely down. On a track, the only things you really got to worry about are jumps, whoops, and turns. Turns, the back shock has to be loose. The looser it is, the more traction you're going to get as compression. And it needs to be tight for jumps, loose for whoops. So you need to find that in between spot. So set anything up the way you like it. Find a good spot, and just leave it there. It takes time. I'm still working it out and trying to find a good setting. But yeah. Alright, so here's the compression test that I wanted to show you. This is just me jumping up and down on the bike because I'm bored and I want to. Just demonstrating a little bit of how and what I mean by the shock. I don't know if you can see that. Anyway, so if I put my full weight in the back behind the tires, it's going to make the shock compress a lot more than what it should. So as I jump in full, it's going to be using full, if not close to full, of its whole area, which I could actually reduce the compression a little bit. So I'm jumping up and down that whole time. It was very soft at the top. As it got further down, it started getting harder. and never bottomed out. That's pretty much it.